Coming from the great American Southwest, from the very low desert, good morning, good evening, whatever the case may be, to all my listeners around the world. I'm your host, Lionel Tavares. Along here with my special guest co-host, Vickie Joy Anderson. She's going to join us again today. A longtime friend who I feel like I know my whole life is going to join us, and we'll be talking about some very interesting things. We're talking about the human body that God gave us and the natural abilities that it has, and we're going to get into many more details later for the show. Let's save that for the show. So with that being said, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, follow us on all our social media platforms, everything from Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and starting to get this YouTube thing going. So follow us on there. If you want to help the show grow and help support us and get this thing off the ground and help reach more people, more ears all around the world, please help us subscribe. You get access to members only exclusive episodes, and a lot more things are going to come as we keep growing and growing. But other than that, thank you for everybody coming back to the show. It's always a blessing to be on here and have so many listeners and people that believe in me and who've been stuck with me since day one and know what this is all about. So let's get into this episode. Give me a minute. Gotta do the sound effects. You know how it is up in here. So don't forget also, we want to have other people on the show that have experiences with the supernatural. Or it could just be, supernatural could be anything. It could be something that you didn't understand, but something that had a profound effect on you, whether that's something that, that made you think different. Maybe you were born in a certain way where you didn't believe in a spiritual realm, and it opened you up to that. It doesn't even have to be about anything that we talk about. You don't have to be a Christian to be on this show, but we also want to hear your side of the story. We want to connect the dots, and everybody has different experiences, and we're hoping that we can all, connect some dots some way, somehow. And that's just how it is. But I'm a Christian myself. I like to look at everything through a biblical lens, and that's just how it goes. But don't be shy to reach out. I don't judge. Come and send me a DM. All the links are in the bios. And yeah, I hope I hear from you guys soon. So with that being said, let's move forward. Vickie, say hi to the people.
Hello, listening audience.
Yes, Vickie is here. So Vickie, go ahead and introduce yourself and, just tell us where to find all your stuff, all your information, your websites, your book, the whole nine.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on again. It's been too long. I've been like, man, I missed you guys. So thanks for having me back. You can find me at VickieJoyAnderson.com. You can get a hold of me there. You can see where I'm going to be. I've got like 3 or 4 more conferences this year. So if you're anywhere in the Ohio, Kentucky, or Branson area, you can come and meet me in person. You can find me on Instagram, Vickie Joy Author, and I am now on YouTube as of 1 month ago. So trying to get content up there. Right now it's mostly shorts, but that is going to change in the very near future.
Amazing. And I know how you feel about that YouTube thing. We're probably both really late on it. But
Yeah.
It's okay. We'll catch up with everybody else. And everybody that got ahead of us, you're just an example to help us lead the, follow through. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely. Better late than never.
yes.
We'll get there.
Yeah, we it's not win, it's win, not if. But with that being said, let's talk about a little bit about the subjects we're going to be talking about. And to more detail, we're going to be talking about just the whole spectrum of the human body, especially diet. I want to talk about diet because I don't think, most people that listen to this show and probably listen to Vickie already have an idea of how important it is what you put in your body. And it has a big importance. Everything you put, as they say, you are what you eat. Let's use that old school phrase. You are what you eat. And that has truth to it. I mean, when you eat certain foods, your breath smells like that. Everything that comes out of you smells like that. So that's just an example of for example, if you eat asparagus, your pee is going to smell really bad. And, but I'm not trying to, I guess I'm being funny, but I'm also being dead serious. You are what you eat. So we're going to be talking about diet. We're going to be talking about how it affects the body. We're going to be talking about what's in the food that affects the body. We're going to be talking about fasting, and many other things. If I'm missing anything, Vickie, go ahead and let the audience know some mini details before we start opening up.
Yeah. So I just want to say, I'm not a fortune teller, but I'm just going to tell you, I kind of know where this conversation is probably going to go. And if you heard the word health and fasting and you're like, boring, and you're ready to flip this off, this is going to be like something you've never heard before. We're taking this to the next level. The reason I want to talk about this is because I'm sick of all the boring stupid stuff we're reading online. So much of the stuff that we are reading is steering us in the wrong direction. And, for people familiar with my ministry or who have read the book, They Only Come Out at Night, which is my book on sleep paralysis, I have an entire chapter on the Asclepions, which were the healing temples of the 1st and 2nd century, where a lot of our current medical knowledge is rooted in. Galen, the super surgeon of the 2nd century, this guy, Galen, worshipped the god Asclepius, who was the son of Apollo and a mortal woman. So you all know what that makes him, a demigod. It makes him a Nephilim. He had a watcher father and a human mother, and he was the serpent god of healing. And Galen was a worshiper of Asclepius, and they called it dreaming a cure. They were, in essence, sedating themselves on psychedelics of some kind, and they were astral projecting, and they were communicating with the spirit realm as to how to get cures for diseases. Because if you get cures for diseases, you get power and you get money. And the Asclepions were really the big pharma of the 1st and 2nd century. And everything I shouldn't say everything, I maybe need to take it back a little bit there. That was the foundation of our current medical system. Now, I'm not dogging on every person out there, every good-hearted person who went into medicine and who went into nursing because they love people and they have a bedside manner. For those who have heard my story before, I spent the first 15 years of my life in hospitals getting reconstructive surgery. Those doctors saved my life. I had nurses that were so kind to me. I owe a massive debt of gratitude to those people. So we're not villainizing or demonizing every single person out there, your family doctor, your pediatrician. But what we're trying to get people to understand is that our current medical system, which bears the symbol of Asclepius, the serpent god of healing, this demigod, which is a rod with a serpent going up of it, going up the pole, what we see on all of our emergency vehicles and things, that there is a continual link between the past and the present. And they're just like in the days of old, where they kept people ignorant about their bodies, the bodies that God created, this miraculously incredible immune system he gave us. Our bodies were designed to stay healthy and to heal itself. And we've lost that knowledge, primarily because not only has the knowledge been kept from us, the deplorables, but it's being kept by a lot of genuinely good, kind-hearted people who go into medical school because they're simply not taught this stuff anymore. So hang on to your hats, guys. We're going to be talking about health and immune systems and gut health and fasting and some of these things that might be boring. They might not seem fringe to you, but I guarantee you we're going to take this in a little bit of a different direction. And this is going to be some fringe. And I believe that if you take the information that we're going to be giving in this podcast to prayer, and you prayerfully bring this before the throne of God, there are things that you're going to get healed of that your doctors are saying are incurable, because God designed the body to heal itself. And some of this missing arcane knowledge, we're going to bring it up tonight.
Amen to that. That's a very good way to put it out there, because most people do get even me, when I start seeing these, random videos pop up, oh, we're going to talk about don't eat meat, don't eat vegetables. It's always this war between meat and vegetables, and it's just boring. It's the same thing. This side needs to stop eating meat, this side needs to stop eating vegetables. But, it's kind of silly when you think about it. It's like a third or fourth grade argument. But yeah, it is. And but yeah, it's a lot more deeper than that, as you said. I mean, we can even go as far as even demonic in some cases, right? I would say that. And for all the people that would think this conversation is boring, if you're the kind of people that gets that hangs around because all the monsters start to come out in the store, you're going to hear plenty of that tonight. and I think they're in the form of parasites, I would say. And and just so many other things I want to talk about too. I want to also focus on how man, not just men, but men and women, the whole human race is just deteriorating at this point. And when I mean that, I don't mean that in a moral sense, but we are deteriorating morally, but also in a physical sense. I would say if if evolution was real, which is not, we are evolving, we are devolving. So that just proves evolution wrong, unless someone wants to argue and say that evolving is getting worse, because we are devolving. We're losing more information. We're being born with more medical issues. More people are born with autism. More people are men are born with hormone imbalances, and so are women. For example, I mean, look around. Men before the age of 30, erectile dysfunction is off the charts. More, I see a lot of men who are like 24, they're like 40. They lost all their hair already. They're out of shape. They have that, that skinny fat look. I'm just talking serious. And just to put this out there, someone who's in shape, who is healthy, a lot of people like to call that narcissism, right? And there is such thing as narcissism, right? This, for example, just how the world is. There's a lot of people that just post their bodies all day. All they do is post their bodies and look at my body. But at the same time, a healthy body that God created, like a healthy body that is in great condition due to just eating right and having proper exercise, that's how the human body looks. It's beautiful. When all those muscles are popping out, when the woman have, the curves and all this, that is how God made it to look normally. So to be healthy, to me, is not narcissism when it's just how you are made, because you follow common sense, you eat good, you take care of yourself, you exercise properly. That's how a human body looks when it is properly nourished and taken care of. It looks beautiful because God created a beautiful creation. So,
Amen.
yeah, that's just my opinion on that. Because that, I mean, seriously, Vickie, that's all a body when it's kept well, it looks well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always wondered, like, I really wonder what Adam and Eve looked like, because I highly doubt they look like the American ideal, where everybody's skinny and women's wombs are all sunk in, and you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure they're not these skinny minis. Like, I think Eve had some plump to her. She probably had some hips and a butt, like, I think she has something to grab onto, right?
Yeah.
And, where were they born? Like, where was Eden? Where exactly was that? Some people say it's the Middle East. Some people think that's more of an interdimensional place. I tend to think that the fall from the garden was a fall from a heavenly dimension down to earth. I kind of followed the Gary Wayne 6-day creation. It makes more sense out of some of the inconsistencies between Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. If you think that's the same creation, there's a lot of contradictions there. And so it makes me wonder, Jehovah sits and he decides that he's going to make a perfect creation. And I'll bet you that beauty ideal, if Adam and Eve, like, if we saw pictures of them, we would probably as Americans not be physically or sexually attracted to them. We'd think they were fat. We would think they were, whatever. Because we have started to worship emaciated bodies in this country, where the women have to be super, super skinny and disproportioned, super, super skinny, but really big on top, and, this Barbie doll kind of thing. I really wonder what the original ideal was. But with all the things that you're talking about too, there's a lot of people out there that are letting themselves go.
Yeah.
And we've got all this horribly genetically modified food. We have got a lack of self-discipline. We have all of these sugar cravings that we are not knowing how to say no to. And we have got tons of autoimmune disease, or so-called autoimmune disease. We can talk about that later. But as we launch into this, Lionel, I want the listeners to know why this is important to me. People are like, well, this is the girl that talks about sleep paralysis. What's she talking about this for? And the reason I'm talking about this, and by this I mean fasting, self-healing, autoimmune, parasites. The reason why I'm interested in this is because I was recently miraculously healed by God, not a doctor, not a medicine, not a supplement, not a detox, not a program, not somewhere where I had to send, $150 in a self-addressed stamped envelope to get my products. Like, I was cured through a 9-month journey of prayer, where I had tried everything. I had exhausted all of my own efforts. I tried every detox, every lotion, every supplement, every pill, every cream, everything. And I had spent tens of thousands of dollars. I'm not using hyperbole. I spent tens of thousands of dollars out of my own pocket because naturopaths don't usually take insurance. And horrible elimination diets. And Lionel, it got to the point where it was just bondage, trying to keep up with, like, it was sort of ruining my life. Like, it's, you know how hard it is to fellowship when you can't eat 90% of the things out there that people eat, and you can't eat bread anymore. And so it's affecting your fellowship, and you're on the sidelines when you're out with your friends and they're all eating all this great stuff and you can't. And so the reason this is important to me is I took 9 months where I prayed and I said, God, I'm going to do nothing. I'm going to do nothing but pray, have an expectation and a hope, and I'm going to wait on you to cure me. Because even all these elimination diets and these supplements and all these exercises and the vitamin D and the zinc and all this stuff, it's not curing autoimmune. What it's basically doing is what all that stuff is basically saying is there's no cure for autoimmune, allegedly. But there's a briefcase in your gut, and there's a ticking time bomb in it. And eventually that bomb will go off. It's going to lead to cancer or something that's going to kill you. That bomb will go off because there's no cure. But we're going to teach you ways to tiptoe around that briefcase, social distance yourself from that briefcase so that you don't tip it over and prematurely like blow it off, right? And I just said, Father, that's not good enough for me. And Lionel, this was the underlying promise, because if you can hold God to his promises, right? This was the underlying promise that I held God to. And I went all the way back to the Old Testament. I went back to the Torah. God told his people, if you walk in covenant with me, the diseases of Egypt will not fall on you. And I believe that this autoimmune is a disease of Egypt. It's a disease of Babylon. It's not what they're telling us it is. And I thought, okay, I'm not perfect. I'm a sinner. Okay, saved by grace. I'm not saying I've achieved some sort of mountaintop here in my Christian walk, but Lionel, I am a covenant keeper. I keep the Sabbath, and I avoid I keep the dietary laws, not because I think I'm going to burn in hell or lose my salvation if I don't do it, but I'm thinking there must be wisdom in this stuff. It's a covenant. It's part of the covenant. And so I, as best as I can, walk in covenant. And I'm like, Father, how can I walk in covenant with you and have a disease of Egypt? It does not make sense. And so it took me, I had this stuff for 11 years, but it took me 9 months of, and you know why it took 9 months, Lionel? Because I kept picking it back up and saying, I'm going to fix this. You're taking too long, God. So I would order another detox off of Amazon, or I would start doubling up on my vitamin D. Or the reason it took so long is because I kept pulling the reins back and telling God, you're taking too long. So I've got, someone just told me about this new thing I could take or whatever. So finally, when I stopped trying to do it on my own and just said, okay, Father, I'm completely reliant on you, I got healed. I wound up, Lionel, I love the way God works. I wound up doing a parasite cleanse and not even knowing that that's what I was doing. So I'm going to give a little bit of detail, but I'm just going to tell the listeners, if you're interested in my whole story, I'm not going to tell the whole story here. If you go to my YouTube channel, there's it's the longest video on there now. It's called Fasting Cured My Autoimmune. It's about an hour, and that tells the whole story. So you can go there if you're interested. But
No, but
I'm
really,
just gonna,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah.
And what we discussed earlier, that whole thing you talked about, I would love for you to share it just how you did, and add more to it if you want. Guys, when I heard this earlier, I was just as shocked. And if you guys know me long enough to know that I'm in the fitness industry, and one thing I do know is about diets. I mean, I can make someone gain 20 pounds of muscle in a month or make them lose 50 pounds in like 5 days before a fight. So I know a lot about what goes in and out of the body, and I was kind of shocked at what she said. Go ahead, Vickie.
Wow. Okay, so you can hold me in check, Lionel, and if I got a bunch of BS coming out of my mouth, you can say ho ho ho. But this is my personal experience. So here's my disclaimer, guys. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a life coach. I'm not a fill in the hundreds of blanks. I'm not anything. I am a sinner saved by grace who had 11 years of autoimmune, chronic fatigue, hair loss, rosacea all over my face. You guys would not, I would be embarrassed to show you, Lionel, pictures of me when I had rosacea. You could not, my face was covered and it was ugly. It looked like I had leprosy. You couldn't cover it with makeup. There was nothing I could do about it. I had gut issues. I was on the gluten-free diet. There was hardly anything that I could eat. On and on and on and on. All this stuff, leaky gut, inflammation, 30 pounds overweight. I could not lose 1 pound no matter what I did. I'd be at the gym, nothing. So all this stuff is going on. So I've tried everything. I tried all the supplements, and anytime someone said this works for rosacea or this works for the gut or this works for autoimmune, I would do it. Like I said, I think I spent about $15,000 cash in the last 5 years trying to fix this with naturopaths and things like that. And I'm not dogging the naturopaths because I learned a ton from them, and I don't regret one dime I spent because it was all useful in my journey. So with that said, I sort of decided I wasn't giving up, but I was going to stop trying to fix it myself. And I was just going to wait on the Lord. And I guess, Lionel, in my Pollyanna sort of way, I guess I thought I was just going to wake up one day and it was going to be gone. And I'm not being facetious there. I'm not joking. Like, I literally thought he's just going to cure me. And one day I'm going to wake up and the rosacea is going to be gone and I'm going to get blood work done and they're going to say you're cured, you know, like in the Old Testament. Or in the New Testament, rather. And I'm just going to say this, Lionel. I have a theory. You know, we don't really see the anointing that Jesus gave his disciples. He told them, I'm giving you an anointing. You're going to raise the dead. You're going to heal the sick. And you are going to cast out demons. We don't see a lot of churches nowadays successfully doing that. We see a lot of people pretending to do that, and every once in a while we do see a miracle. We see people who've cured from cancer and things like that. In the old days, we would lay hands on people, or we would anoint them with oil, and we would pray over them and they would get healed. And I'm not saying that that formula won't work for us today, but I think that the anointing on the church that is going to bring mass amounts of healing from cancer, autoimmune, and any other flu that they decide to invent in the next year or two. The way we are going to cure people, the way the gift of healing is going to look in the church in this generation is we're going to learn to fast, and we're going to learn about parasites, which I think is the probably sole enemy behind all of these diseases. Maybe that's an exaggeration. Like I said, I'm not a doctor.
I agree.
But a lot of things that are, you know, well, you've got irritable bowel syndrome, you've got Lyme's disease, you've got cancer, you've got a gluten intolerance, you've got leaky gut. What if those are all just symptomatic titles, but the root of all of it are these parasites? So before I tell you how I was cured, I'm going to go back to a scripture in the New Testament that I've always been intrigued by. There's a guy who brings his son to Jesus and says, my son has these seizures. He throws himself into the fire. He gets violent. Nobody, your disciples tried to cure him and they couldn't, help me. And why I love this passage is because you get a little bit of clarity if you look at all of the different translations. So if you go on like a Bible Hub and look up one verse, and then they have all the different translations of the same verse, and you can see them all there side by side. In some translations, the father says that his son has seizures. In other translations, he says, my son has a lunatic spirit. In some translations, he says, my son is demon possessed. In some translations, it says, my son has epilepsy. And on and on. I think one translation says he's moonstruck, which is similar to lunatic. That's where we get Luna from, right? The moon of the moon. There's probably some indication there that when these ancient people worshipped the moon gods, like Sin, like Jericho, they worshiped the moon god, which is why when they traveled around Jericho and the walls fell during a full moon, because God was exerting his power over the moon god. Even when your God is at full strength, I can knock your walls down, right?
Yeah.
So when you're involved in monthly rituals that revolve around the phases of the moon, or various equinoxes, or eclipses and things like that, when you're worshiping these moon gods, you are actually taking part in rituals, like occult rituals. So they were probably doing blood sacrifice, they were probably doing cannibalism, they were probably doing orgies, they were probably doing things to children we don't want to talk about. So it is my theory that this boy picked up a lunatic spirit because he was being taken to a ritual, because his family probably was worshiping a moon god of some kind. Because in one of the books, I don't know if it's Mark, in one of the Gospels that tells this story, Jesus asks the father, how long has this been happening? And he says, since childhood. So we know the boy wasn't born with it. It wasn't something genetic. He was a perfectly healthy boy, and at some point in childhood, all of a sudden, he's got a lunatic spirit on him, right? But here's where it gets really interesting. And I think we have all heard 100 sermons on this verse. And here's where I'm going to tell you, I think that we've had it wrong. He says, I took my son to your disciples and they couldn't cast him out. They couldn't cast out the demon. And Jesus gets a little miffed and he's like, oh, how long do I have to put up with you guys? And then he's like, some will only come out by prayer and fasting. And then he heals the boy, but he doesn't get healed of a disease. Demons come out of him, right? So here we have one of those obscure verses where a child is being co-offered to Jesus as someone who is sick. He has seizures, but Jesus doesn't heal him of a disease. He actually casts out demons. And so here is what I want to point out about the fasting. All the sermons that we've heard is that Jesus is chastising his disciples that the reason they were unable to successfully cast out these demons is because they haven't been fasting. Two things wrong with that interpretation. They had already been given an anointing. They had the ability to cast out demons. So why couldn't they do it in this case? And we also know from another passage in Scripture that the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the high priests and the scribes, they came to Jesus complaining. We have to fast. John the Baptist's disciples have to fast. How come your disciples aren't fasting? And he says, when the bridegroom is with the bride doesn't fast because you're there, you're feasting, you're with your bridegroom. And so he said, basically when I die, when I go away, they'll fast again. So why would Jesus chastise his disciples for not having enough faith to cast out a demon after anointing them to cast out demons and after already explaining that as long as he was with them, they didn't have to fast? So my theory is that he was telling the Father that the way to get rid of some quote unquote demons is the person who is demonized has to fast. So why is going without food and possibly water the solution to exorcising demons, unless there are cases where the demon possession has manifested so deeply that it has started to take on physical aspects of illness? And it becomes one of those, which came first, the chicken or the egg? And here's what I think. I think a lot of demons, when a person is demonized, they're not going to be acting like Linda Blair in The Exorcist. They're not going to be vomiting up pea soup, and every time a priest walks by, they're going to talk in a growly little monster voice. And like that's theater, that's Hollywood. What demons are going to do, because they're smart, if they finally find a host, they don't want to get thrown out of that host. So they're going to be in there incognito. They're going to lay low. So what are they going to do? They are going to mimic physical and mental illnesses. That way, the person is off distracted at their psychiatrist's office, at the pharmacy, at the doctor's office, and they're going to be doing all of these things, making the Asclepions rich. And they're going to be doing all these things to heal the disease or heal the mental illness. And what they don't realize is, in many cases, in a lot of cases, I don't know statistically. Maybe I should ask it as a question instead of a statement. How many of our physical and mental diseases and illnesses are just some sort of demonization manifesting that way as a ruse so that we don't figure it out and cast them out, because we have authority over them. And if we knew we had a demon in us, we would do what we needed to do and they'd be out in a second. And so that's what I think. And I'll go a little bit into my story and how I got cured, Lionel, but I've been dominating the discussion, so I want to at least throw
no. I mean, we're losing. No, so, I just want to get to touch a couple of things. Going from the beginning, I have an opinion about the description of Adam and Eve. I think they were in perfect shape.
Yes.
And when you're in good shape and you eat right and you get proper exercise, your body looks how it is. If it's a guy, he's going to be lean. He's going to have, abdominal muscles, leg muscles. And a woman, she's always going to carry a little more fat around the hips and thighs because it's there to bear children.
Yep.
And she's probably going to be also very lean everywhere else because the body doesn't need to carry excess fat. If you're, you know what I mean? Like, it's just,
yes.
If you're healthy, you're healthy. I think that's how you look. And I'll go even further. If I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong on this. Did God not say he made the angels also in his image? Or no?
We are not told anything about when or how or why the angels were created. They're not really in the creation story.
Well, my point is that they kind of look, some of them look like us. They can, transform into us. And some of them, come out looking how they look. But their children, the giants,
yes,
always supposedly physically fit in the best physical things that a human would be, but just times 1,000. And how did they look? Very muscular, very robust. So I would think a human would be a smaller version of that because it's a superhuman. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
that's the way I think that's why it will look that way, is because the man is supposed to be there. Because back then, I mean, there wasn't factories, butchering animals for us. You had to go hunt yourself. You have to build your own things. You have to be strong for that. I don't think people understand who,
yes.
I grew up on a ranch. You can't be in the shape you are just working at an office and coming home and watching TV and eating and think it's going to be easy to spend your whole day, and not just whole day, your whole life, okay, axing your own wood, cutting down your own trees, hunting your own animals. You would have to be physically fit.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So
amen.
I do think, go ahead.
I absolutely believe that the corporate world, which I'm speaking from experience, guys, I was in the corporate world for many, many, many years. Those office buildings are designed to make us sick.
Oh yeah.
You're in these offices all day. You leave before the sun comes out. When you come home, the sun is going down. You are in all of this, breathing in all of this recirculated air. You've got all of the fake lighting, and you're not getting any vitamin D. You're not getting any fresh air, and you're not really getting any light, because a lot of these office buildings, you're only getting a window office if you're a bigwig. So you're stuck in the sea of cubicles in the middle. You don't have enough time to eat. You're usually running to a cafeteria, getting some processed food or food out of a vending machine, or you're putting something in a microwave. You're getting 3 or 4 bites of it because you're so busy. You got to be back to the desk. That's causing cortisol levels. It's causing stress. The corporate world, it's almost as if it was intentionally designed to ruin your family and your body and your health.
Yeah, I would go on and say I agree with that based on the job that I do. I train a lot of professionals, people that do office jobs. And, it's like you said, it could be causing problems anywhere from them not being able to see their wife, or vice versa, the husband enough, or the kids, or to anywhere from having bedroom problems because they can't perform because they're unhealthy, they're sick, their hormones are off balance. And, back to what I was saying before, it's a scientific fact. Men and women today, how healthy we are, and compared to like a couple hundred years ago, is completely different. For example, men today, or men like 300 years ago, when they were in their mid 40s, almost 50, they had the same testosterone. I mean, they had more testosterone back then at that age, almost 50, late 40s, than a man today would have it when he's 25. And what's changed since then and now, besides propaganda. Propaganda doesn't physically harm you. You know what I mean? It's just mental, but the bodies are also being physically altered. Like I said, men are having all these problems. Women are having problems. A lot of women can't have birth now, and on it goes. Um, I would definitely say the difference between then and now would be the food, the air quality, the light quality. I mean, we're being affected with these phones. All that blue light messes up your brain, messes up your vision.
Yep.
The diets that we have, the radiation makes us sick. Everybody says just take probiotics and you'll be all right. I can't tell you how many probiotics I took and I don't feel nothing. It's like a placebo. I just want to say, yeah, I feel better, just to shut the person up that told me to take it. So,
Yeah.
because I don't know what to say. Do you feel better? Then you kind of trick yourself. Maybe I do feel better today, and actually I don't. So, nothing that I've taken, at least that I've tried, has helped me feel any better. I just changed up my diet a lot. As of recently, I don't have like a special diet. I just use common sense when I eat. For example, if I'm hungry, I'm not going to choose Carl's Jr. I'm going to choose to go home and cook something if I can. And if I can't go home and cook something, and my only option is to go to fast food, guess what? I'm gonna skip that meal. I'm gonna drink water until I'm full. So I try to make common sense decisions when I go to if I go to the corner store and I just want to get something quick. I see Coke, I see this, I see fruit drinks. I'm gonna get a sparkling water at the very most, so I can think I'm drinking a soda. You just make common sense decisions. They have the Snickers bars and they have the protein bars. Get the protein bar. Is it a perfect meal? No, but it's common sense, guys. Yeah. Just have common sense when you eat. That's a start, I would say.
Yeah.
The start is to have common sense. I can't tell you how many diets that I have seen in my lifetime. There's like 1 billion diets now. And I'm just going to go back, to like 50, 40 years ago. Or maybe, I don't know how long ago Arnold Schwarzenegger was around back in his prime. I want to talk about him a little bit. Not that he's some godly guy, but let's just talk about that guy, okay? There was no special pre-workout. There was no super vitamin. I mean, was that guy on steroids? Yes. So are the guys on steroids today? Yes. But the guys today are like they're like also talking about billions and trillions of diets. And you want to go look at Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's doing the same drugs they're doing, but having a way simple diet. He would just eat massive amounts of meat and vegetables and drink a lot of water. And he looks better back then than the guys today that have triple the amount of drugs, triple the amount of diets, and all the synthetic, stuff in food that can make this, this part grow bigger and this part heal faster. Arnold Schwarzenegger looked better back then with just food. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's definitely something going on. Even just intelligent levels are also going down. I mean, your IQs are going down. I mean, the list goes on. Like, for example, I was talking about earlier, I want to bring this up. I thought this was crazy to me. So looking back at all the history that I like to look at ancient history of diets and workouts from, ancient times. And what I found out is the Greeks, the Romans, they had a very strong physique that, as of recently, maybe in the past less than 3 decades ago, when they were examining some of these skeletons that they found of medieval skeletons, and even as far back as the Greeks and the Romans. At first, these people that found them, archaeologists, whatever you want to call them, they thought they were like deformed people until they found a bunch of skeletons. And what was deformed about them was they had these big, massive arm bones compared to the rest of their body. To end up finding out that their arm bones were extra big because they had to compensate for all the muscle mass that they had, because these were archers, right?
Oh.
And these archers started, as they were children, and the point is that their diet was very simple. They had pottage, nuts, fruits, vegetables, and pottage would be just a soup with some veggies, maybe some meat, some beef or some fish. And they were able to develop that kind of muscle that today will probably take a lot of unnatural supplements to get. And this was all just from their diet and pulling that bow. And people can argue all day that, it's the exercise growing up as a kid that got them there. Yes, but it also takes nutrients to grow the muscle. You can't just grow muscle and bone without an outside source going into the body. It's very simple. The human body grows when you put a lot in it, and it shrinks when you take a lot out. It's very simple. So it was their diet too that got them to have the vitamins and the nutrients in order for those bones to grow extra bigger, in order for those muscles to get extra stronger, and so on and so on. So that's something I wanted to bring up. Have any questions?
Yeah, no, actually, I want to add some stuff to that. So I think one of the reasons why we have all of these, like the diet confusion, no two people are alike. This idea that every single human being has the same metabolism, and this is why we've got, like, the people that only eat fruit, and then we've got people who only eat meat, then we've got the vegetarians, and we've got all this, right? Some people, depending on metabolism, some people, you're going to lose weight and be really healthy if you're eating a lot of fruits and vegetables. Other people, you're going to get lean and lose weight and be really healthy if you're eating a lot of meat. And then the third type of metabolism is you're kind of a combination of both, right? And what I think is really interesting is when you look at how villainized eating meat is in America, and you notice it's increasing, and there's all of this like demonizing the cows, like, their flatulence is destroying the ozone layer, as if the creator of the universe would create something that would destroy his own planet, right? So
cows, I mean, they're just chilling, they ain't doing anything. They don't do
right, exactly.
So innocent.
Well, here's my little theory, and you can take it or leave it. I'm not dogmatic on this, but here's my theory. I think that the reason why we're being told that meat is bad for us is the same reason why in other countries they don't eat meat because it's sacred, right? You don't eat the cow because it's sacred, or that could be a reincarnated relative. Like, you can't eat the cow. Well, over here, that's not going to work in America because our stomachs are our gods. And if you tell us not to eat ribeyes anymore, we're going to say, screw you, I'm going to eat my ribeye, right? So how do you get an American to not eat beef? You scare them. If you eat this, you're not going to have your sexy body anymore. It's bad for you. And like, there's nothing worse for an American than not looking good in their jeans, right? So that's the way they spin it here. But what's really happening here is the ancient gods, they didn't retire, they didn't die. They're still around, and much of these ancient gods, these Nephilim and the Watchers and the fallen ones, they were depicted as cows and bulls and calves. And so when we eat meat, we are desecrating their gods, right? And so we are being unwittingly groomed into a form of worship because we are not allowed to desecrate their gods. Don't eat the meat, don't eat the beef. Even though it says in Genesis, as part of the Noahic covenant, that's when God put the rainbow in the sky and he made a covenant with Noah. From this point forward, I will never flood the earth again. There's all these stipulations that, if someone takes a life, you take their life because they've struck down the image of God. There's all these stipulations in the Noahic covenant. One of them is you're free to eat anything that moves along the earth. Now, granted, there's some nuances there. And when you get into the parts of scripture where things are biblically unclean, you're dealing with bottom feeders. So there are vultures and various carrion that eat off of the corpses of dead birds and dead animals. When you're talking about lobsters and some of the sea animals, they're the vacuum cleaners of the ocean. They're along the ocean floor and they eat the corpses. And so when you evaluate the things that we're not supposed to eat, it's because they're eating off of dead things. And we're going to get into that when we talk about the parasites and things like that. But basically, what they're trying to do is groom us into not desecrating their gods. And another thing, and this is the last thing I'll say about the villainizing the meat, I have also heard people who try to spin it biblically that Daniel and his cohorts, right, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they did not want to eat the meat in Babylon because they knew that it was offered to the gods. It was involved in rituals, and it was involved in sacrificial ritual meals. And so they didn't want to eat the meat of Babylon, A, because it was used in rituals, and B, it was probably unclean meat that wasn't kosher to them. And so people will say, well, Daniel survived on water and vegetables and he thrived and he got really strong. So eating no meat and only eating vegetables and water, that's the biblical prescription for how to be healthy and strong. But what people aren't realizing is that when Daniel and Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego were strong and healthy and even more fit than the ones eating the meat, that was the whole miracle. that was the miracle, that somehow these guys eating nothing but broccoli and carrots were just as healthy as the guys eating all the meat. That they marveled at that. They saw that as a miracle. And so it just shows that there's no biblical mandate that says we cannot or should not eat meat, that it's wrong, that it's sinful, that it's not good for us. And so I'm not dogging on vegetarians and vegans, Lionel. Everybody has to do what they want to do. And I got hills that I'm going to die on in this life.
Yeah.
And if someone doesn't want a ribeye, that's up to them,
That's fine.
but the fact of the matter is, don't try to make this into a spiritual or a biblical mandate for all of mankind when the Bible clearly says in the Noahic covenant that we're free to eat of anything that roams the earth.
And isn't a Passover have meat involved?
Yes. In fact, they were commanded on Passover. Passover wasn't like, it was mandatory. And you ate that Passover lamb. You partook of it. And so if you didn't partake of the Passover lamb, you were actually breaking the Torah. So yeah, that's a really good point too.
Nice.
Obviously, we have examples of Jesus eating fish and things like that as well. So it's just not a real solid argument. If you don't want to eat meat, that's your choice. But to make it a point of religiosity where God has commanded us, or that it's somehow sinful, or that you're somehow more spiritual than the people that do, you don't really have a hermeneutical leg to stand on if you're trying to argue that biblically.
Yes, I 100% agree. A lot of people are making it a religious thing, or, you're not really a Christian, or you're not really this because you eat meat. You're interpreting the Bible wrong. The lamb means a piece of bread, that it's a symbol for a piece of bread, that the Catholics do, and all this stuff. I mean, people could just make up whatever they want, however they feel, just to twist things around. But, like you said, they can eat whatever they want, whenever they want, how they want. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. We're just here to give the information out. And if you don't like it, then it's okay. And if you do, I hope you guys learn something and then try it out. Just try something different. In my opinion, doing what I've been doing for almost my entire life. I've been in the fitness industry since I was 13. And people are going to say, what'd you know at 13? I knew a lot at 13. I was very blessed to have professional NFL players and bodybuilders around me when I went to Gold's Gym that just taken a light to me and showed me a lot of things about diet. Oh, what's going on? Don't you touch that down now. The Sabbath at Midnight episode is over. This? But not the Sabbath at Midnight. So thank you everybody for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you learned something.
It's our mandatory tech issue.
Bigfoots. So I'm going to let Dominic close out this episode. Everybody have a good night or a good morning, whatever the case. We're going to have to delete that. Let me see. What time was that at 47? Okay. So, as I was saying, all this stuff about certain diets and all that, because nowadays there are certain, autoimmune diseases and different things that people are born with because of all the stuff that's going in the food, the hormones, the pesticides. Some people cannot tolerate certain meats. Some people can't tolerate, some people can't even eat a lemon because their body can't handle the acid.
Mm-hmm.
Lactose intolerance. But maybe I could be wrong. Maybe when we get into this parasite thing, we could, trade some information and see how we could, battle these things. Because I really do think a parasite is like demonic. Because a spirit takes over the body, takes over your wants, your needs, your control. And I will say a parasite does that in a different way, kind of in a physical way, but it's still spiritual in a way, because the things that makes you do affects you in the spiritual realm, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, this is a great place to transition to the parasites. So again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not giving out advice. I'm giving you my personal experience of my own healing, but also, and obviously I believe in allergies. I believe there's people that are allergic to milk and so don't drink it, right? I'm not one of these people like handle the snakes and you won't get bitten. I'm not trying to be a snake handler here if you have allergies and whatnot. But what my experience was is all of a sudden in my 40s, all of a sudden I'm being told I'm allergic to wheat and gluten and there's all this food I can't eat. And you should have seen my elimination diet, Lionel. There was like 30 things left that I could eat the rest of my life. And that included like salt, pepper, and so.
No, really quick. Just
Yeah.
be there. I'm laughing because I have people that come into the gym and they're telling me this doctor said this and that. They're literally telling them don't eat meat, don't eat these vegetables, don't eat this, don't eat that. And I'm like, so what's left to eat? Like, what can
Yeah.
you eat? Like, so you can eat a piece of radish and a piece of lettuce and a little sip of water throughout the day. Great. You know, like
Basically,
that's the point. Like, what can you eat? You know what I mean?
yeah. I basically was living on kale, asparagus, a couple kinds of fish. I could eat beef. I could eat turkey. I was never supposed to eat chicken ever again. And this was great too. I was told you can't eat broccoli. You can't, like, all these vegetables were off the table. But at the same time, I'm being told I have to eat 6 to 8 servings of vegetables a day. So I do this for like 6 months and I get retested and I'm told I have too much fiber and to cut down on the green vegetables. So like, I couldn't even, it made no sense. So anyway, with all that said, um, why all of a sudden in my 40s can I not eat stuff? Why, even when I'm eating healthy organic food, why am I bloating after every meal? You know, what's going on here? All of a sudden I have holes in my intestine is what I'm being told. All of a sudden I'm being told that my thyroid that God created, that my immune system no longer knows what it is and it's attacking it because it thinks it's an enemy. Uh, why all of a sudden is this complex system that God created going defunct? Why is this disease of Egypt upon me? And so that was what I was praying through. So I'm gonna get to the punch and I'm gonna keep this short, but here is where I accidentally got healed. Okay. I wasn't even thinking about my autoimmune or getting healed or anything. And a friend and I had been on a 4-year journey together where we had been fasting and we had been learning how to fast and learning how to pre-fast so that we didn't get the headaches and all that stuff. And so every time we would get together and do a fast together, we would pick something that we were praying for. And we would be maybe interceding for the nation, like during the election, or we would be interceding for friends who were sick, something like that. So we called it intercessory fasting. And we were kind of just experimenting that if 2 people come together and pray and fast, will it be more effective than if we don't pray with fasting or we don't pray with another person? And so we've been doing this for several years and we had seen a lot of miracles and a lot of people getting healed. And so I don't know now, a couple months ago, I found out that a friend of mine was terminal and I didn't even know that she was sick. And I was very distressed because I just love this woman very dearly and I was very affected by it. So I called my friend and I said, would you be willing to fast for a friend of mine who's terminal? And by this point, you know, we've been doing this for 4 years. And so we decided to do a 10-day fast from food. So we were still going to drink water, but we just were going to fast from food. And when you've been fasting for 4 years and you've been incrementally working up to that, 10 days is actually not that hard. By day 4, you're not hungry anymore, especially if you haven't, leading up to the fast, if you haven't been eating sugar or caffeine, it's pretty easy. If you can get through the first 3 days of hunger pains, day 4 through 10, it actually gets easier and easier. You actually get more and more energy.
That's
So
interesting.
it sounds hard, but if you've worked up to it, a 10-day fast really isn't that big of a
I've
deal.
done
And so,
like 2 days max. I've done
yeah,
like 2 days.
and you're actually robbing yourself because day 4 is the payoff. So if you go through 2 or 3 days of pain and you quit, it's like being a runner in the Olympics and being 10 feet from the finish line and quitting the race. Like that's what it is when you fast 2 or 3 days. Day 4 that's when deep repair in the body starts to happen and things like that. So
So really quick, because for the
yeah,
audience, I'm curious too. So tell me, day 4, you're fasting. How
yeah.
do you feel mentally, physically, happy, mood, hormones, up, down, left, right? Love to know because I'm
Well,
curious.
I'll tell you this. When you get to day 4 and your body is riddled with autoimmune, aka parasites, day 4 through 10 is going to be living hell. And I used to think, what are all these people talking about? By day 4, I'm out doing cartwheels and all this nonsense. Because when I used to fast, I would still be hungry. I'd still be in pain. I'd get horrible leg cramps. Now, some of this stuff, some of the headaches and the leg cramps, could actually be a parasite die-off. Like they always say, it's because you're off caffeine and things. Some of these things that you're experiencing, getting sick, throwing up, leg cramps, headaches, some of that could actually be a parasitic die-off because you're starving them. So don't always, sometimes we look at the pain and we're like, I don't like this isn't fun, so I'm going to quit. But sometimes that pain is a sign that you're actually healing. So stick with it. So, but when you're healthy, because now I've had fasts since I don't have the autoimmune. If you're doing a fast and you're not sick and you don't have parasites, by day 4, 5, 6, you're actually euphoric. You have energy. And if you're pairing your fasting like you're supposed to be with a spiritual experience where you're praying and you're worshiping, it is a euphoric time of intimacy with God. But you have to work up to that. And if you're sick or you have parasites or you have autoimmune disease, you're not going to have that experience until you get rid of the parasites.
What?
This is the way a healthy body responds in a fast.
Okay. So really quick for the audience, what about the thirst part of it? Can you drink water during this time or can you not drink water?
Yeah. So a regular fast, you are drinking water. And that's the way my friend and I always did it. We would just do these water fasts where all we would be drinking is water. Now, there's tons of different kinds of fasts, Lionel, and they're all legit. Some people do bone broth fasts where all they drink is water and bone broth. Some people do coffee fasts. Now, this doesn't mean Starbucks full of whipped cream and chocolate and caramel and all that stuff, right? I'm talking just black coffee. There are people that do milk fasts, but now that's more of an ancient technique. And if you're going to do a milk fast, I don't mean you go and get a plastic carton full of plasticides with your skim milk at the grocery store, right? I'm talking whole milk from the farm. You're drinking the raw milk with all the good stuff in it. So a really good book, if people are interested in fasting, for $5, you can go on Amazon and get a book called The Fasting Cure by Upton Sinclair. Lionel, it was written in 1911, and you would have thought it was written a month ago. He's talking about the gluten and the refined sugar, and he doesn't use the words autophagy and ketosis, but he's describing those exact same things. They just have different terms for it. So if anyone's interested in this, and what I love about the book, The Fasting Cure, is it's not a formula. It's not a one size fits all, like do a 10-day fast and on day 4 do this and only it's basically you listen to your body. And when you're doing a hunger fast, your body will tell you when it wants to eat again. And I don't mean I want a Twinkie. I mean, you're going to know. You listen to your body. And I'm talking about when you're fasting because you're sick. You've got cancer, you've got autoimmune, you've got parasites. When you dry fast, which we're going to talk about for a second here, the tongue is the indicator of when to stop. So what we've been told since birth is 3 days without water, you keel over dead, right? Well, we know this isn't true because there's people that do 3-day, 5-day, 7-day, and 10-day water fasts. Now they've worked up to it and they know their bodies. The indicator of when you stop dry fasting is that your tongue changes color. So when you dry fast, your tongue changes to white, and that's good. But once that white color starts to change and go away, that's your body saying, I need the water now. We're done. But the reason why they're spreading this Truman Show-esque kind of myth that we must start drinking water after day 3 is because day 4 is when all of our T cells regenerate in the body. Our organs will repair. Parasites will be taken out of the body. They'll be ejected. Healing of major diseases start happening on day 4 of a dry fast. So that's why Big Pharma and the Asclepions don't want you to figure that out. So you're going to die. Truman, if you go into the ocean, you'll drown. This is the whole Truman Show story. Don't go 3 days without water. So I can give you a personal story. My grandmother, she passed away when she was 98 years old. And I think she was about 90 pounds. She looked like a skeleton. She was just withering away. And she didn't have any heart problems. She'd never had a stroke. She didn't have cancer. She was just old. She didn't have any illness or sickness. The only medication she had ever been on her entire life was an over-the-counter diuretic, like a stool softener, because she was constipated a lot. She had never had a heart problem, never had surgery, never had a stroke. She was blind and deaf and had trouble pooping, but she was 98 years old and just going strong. When the hospice nurse came in and said, okay, we can tell by this, this, and this that she's probably, at the last, 24 hours of her life. And at this point, she was not conscious. Her eyes were closed. She wasn't speaking, but she was breathing. So they stopped giving her water. They stopped feeding her. They took her off any sort of support system. They didn't give her anything to drink, no IV, no fluids, no food. And this 98-year-old woman lived 11 days until she passed away. 11 days.
That's amazing.
Isn't it? It's incredible. So here's my storyline. And I keep saying here it is, and then we keep going off on these fabulous tangents. But so a friend and I decided to do a 10-day water fast for the healing of a terminal friend. So at this point, I'm blissfully unaware of my own problems. I'm not focused on my bloating and my weight gain and my, disgusting gluten-free bread. There's nothing going on this 10 days except we're focusing on praying for this friend. So I get 5 days into my fast and I'm feeling pretty good. And Lionel, unless you know me, I very kind of stoic Scandinavian, plus I'm from Missouri, the show me state. Like I'm kind of the Thomas, like show it to me. I'm not moved by my emotions. I'm not moved like when I'm in church and the worship is going, I'm not sobbing, and it takes a lot to kind of get some genuine emotion out of me. So I'm not one of these people that has a bunch of dreams and visions and the Holy Spirit told me this and that sort of a thing. I kind of want it in black and white. I want to see it in scripture. I'm kind of boring like that. But at the end of day 5 of this fast, I can't even explain to you how. It was nothing like I didn't get goosebumps and, I didn't see like a vision of an angel in the room or anything, but I just knew in my heart, I absolutely knew that the Lord was telling me, do the remaining 5 days as a dry fast. And fortunately, I was so ignorant because by the time you haven't eaten for 5 days, your stomach is so empty that drinking tons and tons of water becomes disgusting and you get that acid reflux and stuff. So I don't really drink tons of water at that point anyway. So I thought, oh, this will be okay. I just won't drink water. That's cool. And so I went into it blissfully ignorant of how difficult it was going to be. And I made a lot of mistakes too, because the 5 days that I had been fasting, I was also going to the gym every day and I was sitting in the sauna for 30 minutes. So I was dried out, as I was already pretty dried out, right? But I didn't know that I was going to be doing this dry fast. And typically, if you're going to do a dry fast, you do it first, not after 5 days of being hungry, right? I didn't know, but I really felt like the Lord was telling me. So the way I interpreted that was, my friend is going to die. Her life is hanging in the balance. What if the enemy is involved in this? Because it was the result of long COVID. So I thought, what if the enemy has such an investment in this one, or such a grip on her, that it was going to just take more intense of a fast to save her life? And I thought, if I can have any impact on saving this woman's life, am I going to like let her die because I don't, I got to have my water, right? And believe me, Lionel, I know no one lives or dies based on what I do or don't do, right? Okay, God ordains before our days how many we have. I'm not saying that if I hadn't fasted, she would have died or whatever. But my interpretation is this must be warfare, and I got to kick it up into high gear because this woman's life is hanging in the balance, and she's my friend. And if the way I can express love to this woman who doesn't even know I'm fasting for her, can I go without water for 5 days? And so I will just tell you in a nutshell that it was the hardest test of endurance I've ever had in my entire life. It was rough. And by the end of day 3, the friend that I was fasting with and my dad were like, you got to stop. You got to drink water tomorrow. And they had me talked out of it. Like, I'm going to drink water tomorrow. They're right. Lionel, I couldn't think, the brain fog, I couldn't string a sentence together. I was talking like a drunkard. If I even got up to just go to the bathroom, I would have to stop and rest. I couldn't even get back to my chair. I was so weak. So I was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna drink tomorrow. And as a small little tangent, because when I said that every time I went to the bathroom, I'm not drinking water and I haven't eaten, but I am going to the bathroom like 5, 6, 7 times a day.
Wow.
And what's amazing about the way God designed our body is when we start to dehydrate, the body does every single thing it can to get moisture. So what it's doing, and this is why you lose so much weight on a dry fast. The body is so desperate for moisture, for hydration, that it starts ripping open your fat cells because it knows there's water in there. But once it rips open the fat cells, what's happening in our current generation, because of all the genetically modified food and all of the, the fast food and the pop and the caramel color and the aspartame, all that, is the body doesn't know how to digest it because it doesn't recognize it as food. So it's like, why would I digest this? It's not food. So it's recognized by the body as poison. So it wraps the poison in a fat cell to protect the body from it. So when you dehydrate yourself, the body becomes so desperate for hydration, it starts ripping open that fat cells, but then it discovers this isn't water. This isn't pure good water. So you're peeing it out all day. So you're literally getting rid of fat cells. So this is happening, and I wake up on day 4 and I'm like, I'm going to have my water today. I got permission. My dad told me not to do this anymore. Yeah, he's my authority. I got to listen to him, right? You have all these excuses in the world, right? And again, I can't explain it because it wasn't anything goosebumpy or supernatural. It was just an absolute knowing in my mind. I said 5 days. And so
what day was this on again?
This was the beginning of day 4.
Oh, wow.
So I had 2 days left. And I have to tell you, day 4 and 5 were brutal. Right?
I get thirsty just from, cause it's hot where I live really quick. I get just from walking from here to the car, I just drench and I get like moody when I don't get my water right away. So I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Anyways, go ahead.
It was rough. My mouth, I was like, the cotton mouth was terrible. And I'm going to tell you a little something about the cotton mouth in a second. But I get up on day 4 and I feel like this is exactly what the Lord told me, Lionel. I said 5 days. Pray that I will sustain you to day 5. And I'm like, whoa, okay. So my prayer for the last 48 hours was, God, I'm not asking you to make this easy, but I'm asking you to sustain me. And he did, but it was rough. By the end of day 4, and bear in mind, I would have quit. So this wouldn't have happened if I had drank water that morning. Again, I'm blissfully ignorant because I don't know what's going on. And I'm not real in tune with my body. And I don't know much about health in the body as you do. I just kind of get up and I eat and I go to the bathroom and say it's all good, right? I don't really know a lot. So that day, I kept going number 2. And it didn't make sense to me because I hadn't eaten in 9 days. So I called my friend who had done a lot more dry fasting than me. And I'm like, what's going on? And she's like, oh my gosh, Vic. She's like, did you look at it? And I'm like, I didn't looking at it. No. And she goes, no. She's like, next time look at it. And I'm like, that's so gross. And she's like, no, believe me, you got to look at it. I'm like, oh, yuck.
Oh my gosh.
So the next time I went, and fortunately it was the last time, because if I figured out what was going on, it would have been rough. But I looked and there was hardly anything there. And I'm like, well, that's anticlimactic. It was just tiny little rabbit poops, right? And so I'm like, well, that's dumb. So I flushed the toilet and it's all just circling down the drain like it's supposed to. And for some reason, I'm just staring at it, probably because I don't have enough energy to do anything else at that point. So I'm just sitting there in a trance, like just staring at it. And as it's all moving in one direction, the pieces themselves start moving in the opposite direction.
What?
And they start unwinding.
Oh, God. I knew it was going to be something like that. Ugh.
Parasites.
I knew it.
So,
oh my gosh.
Thank God.
That's scary.
Thank God that was the orifice they chose, because anything else would have been way too much for me, man. But
Oh my gosh.
so, Lionel, here's the thing. I was doing a 10-day fast for praying for a friend. And what I didn't realize was a culmination of 9 months of telling the Lord, I'm going to stop spending money and ordering everything that I see. You have to heal me, and you have to heal me in a way where you get all the glory. And unbeknownst to me, the fast that he told me to do was a parasite cleanse. I dehydrated those things out of my body. And my dad, who knows a lot about this stuff because he worked for Abbott Labs for almost 30 years, what my dad said is, the reason that they were all curled up is because when they're dying, they're trying to retain what little moisture they have left. So when they hit the water, they were unwinding to soak up all that moisture because they were dehydrating.
My God.
They were dehydrating.
I hate war. I just hate I just can't. I know. I feel like there's some in my body. Just you saying that right now.
Dude, I know.
I for a fact have some. It has to be.
I know. So let me just give a couple little details about dry fasting for all those people out there going, I'm going to try that.
I don't want these things in me either.
When I talk about dry fasting, I don't just mean you don't drink water. You're not eating. You're not drinking water. You're not going to dehydrate parasites out of your body if they're getting moisture. All the water that we touch absorbs into our skin. So if you're washing your hands, or you're taking a shower, or you're brushing your teeth, they're going to get that water. You're feeding them. You're going to continue to give water to these parasites. And so for the people that say, okay, I can get on board with all that, except the teeth brushing, because that's disgusting, and it is. And it's hard. That was the hardest part of it, Lionel, is that like your mouth is just like cotton, and it starts
just can't imagine.
Tasting weird. But here's what we found out. And by we, I mean my friend and I, who've been doing all this research.
Yeah.
We discovered that film that goes all over your mouth, you haven't brushed your teeth for days or drank water for days, it's a curative film designed by God. It's covering every aspect of your mouth and your tongue and your teeth and your gums, and it is actually healing and repairing your teeth and your gums. And this is why a lot of people who dry fast frequently will talk about how their teeth have gotten whiter, because it whitens your teeth. So all of this stuff that we go to the dentist for, the cavities and the gum disease and you know, the soreness of the gums and the teeth getting discolored, that film is actually part of the healing process. And if you brush it off, first of all, I'll tell you, if you brush it off, within 30 to 60 seconds, it's back. So it's only temporary relief anyway. So if you feel that parasites might be behind your autoimmune disease and you're on an elimination diet and you have chronic fatigue and you're taking $400 a month worth of supplements and you're in bondage, in bondage trying to keep up with all this stuff, you might want to prayerfully consider and work up to and learn about how to do a dry fast. I would start with, 12 hours. And you don't want to just, don't be like me and decide 5 days into a fast, so I'm just not going to drink water for another 5 days. Like, I was ignorant, guys. But in my case, I believe that the Lord knew that that's what it was going to take to get the parasites out of me. In 10 days, Lionel, I lost the 25 pounds that I couldn't lose for 11 years. I've kept it off. It's been 2 months. I've kept it off. I've been eating bread. I've eaten candy. I had spaghetti for dinner last night. I'm not gaining the weight back. My hair is not falling out. My rosacea is gone. The chronic fatigue is gone. I might be repeating myself at this point, but
no, go ahead.
The bloating is gone. The inflammation is gone. Everything's gone. So did I really have Hashimoto's and leaky gut and a gluten insensitivity and chronic fatigue, or did I just have parasites? And that was the way they were manifesting. And just so people know, I did go and get blood work done, and I have the proof in blood work that my thyroid is normal. I do not have Hashimoto's. I do not have leaky gut. My autoimmune is undetectable, which is the way that they measure autoimmune stuff. And so I have evidence from the doctor and from my blood that they had me like with 5 diagnoses between Hashimoto's, rosacea, leaky gut, gluten insensitivity, and the what was the fifth one?
Rosacea.
Yeah, one of them. So anyway, so what's really fascinating about all of this, and we're going to shift gears. And so before we shift gears, I'll let you get in there if you want to say something, but I want to explain to people the absolute beauty that God not only created our bodies to self-heal, but he put it all over the Bible, what we need to do to never get parasites. So that's where I'm headed next, but I want to hand the floor to you before we switch
just
gears.
I would love to jump into that because I feel like I was listening to one of those commercials for all the symptoms. That's every single symptoms I have, where you know, all that, you know, you might have a parasite. This is, I swear, that's me. Like I've got IBS. I mean, I'm like getting older, but I don't feel like I'm that old for some of the things. I'm like, I just turned 36 last month, so I have IBS really bad. I have heartburn. I mean, anything I eat gives me heartburn at this point. Like, don't eat this.
Yeah.
Don't. If I don't eat anything they say that gives you heartburn, all I'm left with is a piece of lettuce at the end of the day. So this and no one has a, you know, like IBS. There's no cure for it. There isn't. They just tell you, you know, don't eat this, don't eat that. And even though when you don't, you still feel like crap.
Yep.
So
Yep.
like I said, it has to be. You said, you know, did you have IBS or a parasite? What if the parasite causes? What if the IBS is a parasite? Because I can't get it to go away. I feel like, you know, and the same thing when you said fatigue, foggy. I'm always tired. I'm always irritable. I just, I'm always tired. I'm always irritable. No matter how much sleep I get, I'm tired. And yeah, and I'm foggy brain, whatever you call it, when you just can't think, you can't hold a thought, you know, you can't concentrate on anything. You just want to be home, locked in your room, and just go. You know, that's how I feel all the time. And then my diet, it's impossible for me to stay on my diet because I just don't feel good all the time. It's crazy, man. Now that you say all that, I do.
Well,
I've heard about this parasite thing before, and when you were talking about the worm thing, it just brought me to some video that I saw, how people shouldn't eat bear meat because I guess bears have a lot of worms and parasites. And I saw them. This bear was there, and it was a dead bear, and they cut the skin, and just right underneath the skin, there's like so many parasites and worms moving around, and it just, oh my god! And people eat the bear meat, you know. But I'm just like really, man, because I know, because I feel like I feel like I have that, so I need to get in touch with the dry fast, whatever you call it, ASAP.
I think most of us Americans, because of the degradation of the food and everything that they're launching against us, I do think most of us do have them. And even me, I'm not resting on my laurels, because as quickly as I got rid of them, if I decide to go to Taco Bell every day and drink, you know, a 12-pack of Diet Coke every day, it's only going to be a matter of time before they come back.
That's
right?
what I was going to ask you. How do you know if it comes back? So right when this happened, after you're done with your fast, here's my question. When you're right after you're done doing your fast, the parasites, you saw the worms coming out, whatever you call them. And how did you feel after that? Besides your physical, you know, like, you know, besides your rosacea going away, did you, like, your mind, were you motivated again? Like that, you know, that motivation you used to have when you were whenever year you had it, you know, that feeling again that you can conquer the world and you want to get things done. Like, that feeling has gone.
Yeah. Yes, it did.
It's been replaced with IBS, heartburn, fatigue, you know, concentration.
Yeah.
That drive has been replaced with this drive.
Yeah.
It's insane. It's like spiritual.
Exactly. So the refeed, sometimes the refeed, when you start eating again after the fast, in some ways that's even more painful than the fast, because you're starving, but you eat a little bit and you're full, and you can really, you have to be on a liquid diet for at least 3 days, and then you're just eating watermelon and bone broth, and you're starving, you know, and you got to be really careful what you eat when you get back on it, and when you get back to eating. But once I was refed and I realized that the weight was gone, because usually when I had autoimmune, I would fast and I would lose 10 to 15 pounds. And within 3 days, I was all the way back up to the weight I was at, because it was inflammation and it was bloating and it was, you know. So when I realized that the weight wasn't coming back, and instead of wearing XX, XL t-shirts and size 14 pants. I was back into my sixes. And, because all the bloating was gone. And little things like I got my arms back, I was starting to get the old lady arms, that get like wide and pocky. And I was starting to look like an old woman, and it was starting to show in my neck, and it was starting to show everywhere. And
you look a lot different, by the way, too, since I first met you. You look a lot.
Dude,
you lost a lot of weight from here and all this stuff.
It's crazy everywhere. Like my back curve had disappeared. I got my back curve back, and I'm loving it. So yeah, you just want to, all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I can wear shorts again. And I don't have that, every time you go somewhere, like all of a sudden I was just feeling like an old woman. And now it's like,
I know what you mean. Yeah.
I'm wearing the clothes I wore in my 20s again. Like, it's just great, And so that obviously, and then you've got your energy, and you're not tired all day anymore, and you're sleeping better. And then obviously you start to make better choices because you're like, I'm maintaining this, So what I'm going to do to maintain it now, I'm always going to be a faster, Lionel, because it's biblical, and it's something that we do. But I'm not necessarily doing a bunch of dry fasting. I'm not going to get into performance fasting. Like, well, now I'm going to see if I can do 15 days. Like, I'm not into that, right? And what I'm going to do now is there are certain herbs that you can take. That there's bitter herbs, like there's wormwood, and there's things that you can take. That there are things that we can do. This is key. If you don't listen to anything I say, remember this. There are things that we can do in our diet to make our bodies inhospitable to parasites. The reason parasites love hanging around in our body is because we're giving them everything they want. We're giving them the potatoes and the French fries dipped, dunked in seed oils, and we're giving them the sugar and the donuts and the pop and all that stuff that's wonderful that I love. And, but we are creating a nice, comfy man cave for these things, right? And so they're just like taking up residence in our colon. Like, why should I go anywhere, man? She's going to like eat another dozen donuts today. And so there are things that in the past were eaten as part of the normal American diet, and it makes the human body inhospitable to parasites, but we don't like to eat them because they don't taste good. And we've gotten to a point now where everything we eat has to be sugary and savory and sweet. And we put sugar and salt on everything. And if you go to McDonald's, I just saw a video, every single thing on the McDonald's menu has sugar in it because it's addictive, right? The fries have sugar in it. The Coke is nothing more than high fructose corn syrup. So there's bitter herbs. Like, people used to eat bitter herbs. They used to put cloves, like cloves is an antibacterial. They would put cloves like in their coffee. They'd make clove water and put it in their coffee. And even though that stuff doesn't taste good, it makes your body inhospitable because these things are anathema to the parasites. They don't want that stuff. And if you create an inhospitable environment for them, they'll leave. Like, they'll literally leave. And what's frustrating and discouraging about these expensive detoxes that you're on these detoxes for a month and you're drinking all these creepy elixirs and you're waiting a half hour and then you have to do this and that, and like they're obnoxious and they're expensive.
Oh yeah.
But here's the deal. Some of these detoxes are only going to clean out your stomach, and the parasites aren't in your stomach. They're in your colon.
Oh wow.
If you go and get blood work, the reason why the doctor's going to tell you don't have parasites is because they have to test your colon. They're not doing the tests. I just had a doctor tell me you don't have parasites. And I did, because the tests, they're not testing the right part of the body. And another thing, and this is gross, but even if you get parasites out, if they laid eggs, you just wait till that gestation period, and now you got them again.
So gross.
So I personally don't want to be doing these disgusting liver detoxes every month and all this stuff, right? So I'm probably not going to be doing a fast like that numerous times a year. But There are bitter herbs and things that you can do once you've detoxed. There's things that you can do to make your body inhospitable to these things. And what's really interesting is if you want the blueprint for making your body inhospitable to parasites, bacteria, viruses, and fungus, you will find it in Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And here's the crux of what I wanted to get across. And I'm going to try to make, I hope that this will be exciting rather than boring for the people listening. And for those who are on audio, you're not going to see, I'm holding up right now. I have 5 pages of verses that I have written out where Moses is giving the quote unquote law to the people. And this is the sad thing, Lionel. We live in a church age now. You know, we're under the new covenant. Jesus. Right? We don't have to worry about the law. But what's really fascinating about the law that everybody wants to throw off this rule book, right? But here's the deal. If you really study the first 5 books of the Bible, the law, the Mosaic law, or the Torah, it's not so much a vast minutia of religious rites and traditions. It's actually a dietary and medical handbook. Why do you think this obscure little group of people have survived for thousands and thousands of years when so many other people groups have been wiped off the face of the planet? How did the people of God survive to the 21st century? It's because they follow the Torah, and it tells them. So much of the Torah is anti-parasite laws. So I'm not going to go through all of these. I think I've got like 23 or 25 of them. I'm not going to go through all of them because I know that even though I think this is really exciting, most people aren't going to. But I'll make you a deal. If this is of interest to you, you can go on my website, VickieJoyAnderson.com, and you can send me an email, and I will email you this document. But let's just go through a few of them, Lionel, because this just blows my mind.
I don't know how this is not boring to me. I mean, people should be worried about this stuff. People, I mean, it's cool to talk about, you know, there might be, you know, aliens over here and some fallen angels and 3-headed giants over here. But how is no one not worried and fascinated about the very thing you are perceiving all this with, your body?
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know so,
well, you know, most of us Americans are interested in health and fitness, and we have different reasons for being interested. Some of us want to be healthy. Some of us are in chronic pain, and we want relief. Some of us want to help a loved one who's sick. And, you know, Lionel, it's just the way it is. We all want to look hot, and we want to be attracted to the opposite sex. It's just the way we are, right? Nobody wants to love handles and to be 30 pounds overweight and look like an 80-year-old when they're only 25, right? So we're motivated. You look at all the gyms and the money that we put into this. And so this should be of great interest to you because the Bible is telling you how for free you can cure your diseases. So this should be of interest to you.
Yes.
And I'm just going to tell you, this is a question. I'm not telling you I believe this or I don't believe this. This is a question that I want you to write down and bring to prayer. And you and the Lord, you work this out with fear and trembling. Is there a link between the modern evangelical church's abandonment of the Torah and the tens of millions of Christians who are sick? Why do we have the disease of Egypt on us? And I'm not telling you yes or no. It's not a rhetorical question. I'm not trying to be clever. I'm saying, if you have an autoimmune disease and you're a Christian and you're genuine and you go to church and you love Jesus and you're longing for his coming and you're living a moral, pure life and you're obeying his commandments, but you do not have victory in this area, a disease of Egypt has fallen on you. Is it that the modern church has fallen out of covenant with Jesus? Doesn't mean he doesn't love us, doesn't mean we're going to hell, but is there something to walking in covenant with him that actually has a direct effect on whether or not parasites can gestate in our body or not? That's the question at hand. And I find that just as exciting as the Nephilim and the alien talks. And believe me, I'm all up for Nephilim and alien talk, right?
Yes.
So let's just go through a few of these. I'm just going to go through a few of them. And like I said, you can email me if you want the whole exhaustive list. Okay, so they were told, this is Exodus 12:10, they were told to thoroughly cook the Passover lamb, make your meat well done. Consume the lamb in the same night, and all of the leftovers are to be burned. Now, they didn't have refrigeration and stuff back then. Don't put that out in the desert overnight in a clay pot and eat it the next day, right? Obvious, right? So that's an anti-parasitic law.
Yeah, I really think like these things are always been common sense to. It should be.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Don't eat fish that's 2 days old outside in the sun. I mean, come on, man.
Right. Deuteronomy 23:12-13. Don't poop where you eat, right? Dig your latrines outside of the camp. And so I'm going to have a little caveat here, Lionel.
What's going on?
About 252,000 soldiers in the Civil War died of dysentery, typhoid, pneumonia, measles, tuberculosis, and malaria.
Wow.
That's almost 50% of the entirety of the Civil War casualties. They say about 620,000 soldiers died in the Civil War. 252,000 of them died because of dysentery, which means no clean water, you're not digging latrines, and you're around dead bodies.
Wow.
All of which is addressed in the Torah.
That's insane.
If all they had done was read Genesis, 252,000 Civil War soldiers would have come home.
Dang, I didn't know that. Interesting.
Right? So don't poop in the camp. That's Deuteronomy 23:12-13. Leviticus 5:2. When you touch a dead thing, wash and be unclean till evening. In other words, you're self-quarantining. You touched a dead animal. You touched something with maggots on it, right? And when things die and they decompose, there's gases coming off of it, right? Oh man, there's so many of these I don't even know. Some of these are obvious. The sexual restrictions, blood emissions from the body. If a rat or a mouse or a rodent or any unclean thing, if you find it dead in one of your clay pots, in other words, in your dishes, you don't wash the dish. You bust the dish. Obviously, rats, mice. Okay, so this one I thought was really cool, Lionel. And let me see, because I want to get the verse for it too. There is a tradition, and this is all over in the Old Testament too. The traditional days of mourning when someone died in the Old Testament was 7 days. And what they called it in the Semitic cultures and the Jewish cultures, they call it the sitting Shiva. And that's not to be confused with Shiva in the Buddhist sense, like, the Shiva statue outside of CERN. The sitting Shiva is all of the relatives and the mourners gather in one house with the corpse for 7 days of mourning. They're self-quarantining. They don't go anywhere. They're all in that same place. They're not running around doing shopping and then coming back. But part of this tradition, and you see this all over in the Old Testament, when people mourned, they would put ashes on their head. And during this sitting Shiva, when they were quarantined with the dead body, many people would either put ashes on their head or they would shave their head. And so we just think that that's part of the mourning process. No.
That's for,
They shave their heads because funguses and parasites get in through our hair follicles. This is why when there's an outbreak of head lice, people have to shampoo or shave their heads. Now, this is why they shaved all the heads of the people in the Holocaust, because it spread disease. They would get rid of the hair. Interesting thing about the ashes. Now, when we think about ashes on the head, we think about like the Catholic Church on Ash Wednesday when they put ashes on the forehead, or you think they just take a pile of ashes and dump it on their head. No. Ashes were a main ingredient in homemade soap. And when you mixed ashes with hyssop and water, which is a recipe given in the Old Testament for purification, the Levites would wash in this bronze laver. Bronze has antiparasitical, antifungal properties to it. It would put something in the water. And when you mix water, hyssop, and ashes, and you put it on your head, it's actually an ancient recipe for shampoo. It's an anti-lice shampoo. So they weren't just ceremoniously throwing ashes on their head because their loved one died. They were protecting themselves because they were in a house with a corpse. So, oh man, I could go on and on and on. And some of these just get really exciting.
And then, really earlier, you said too about, I think you pretty much said, you're talking about the, when people have sex, you said something about blood admissions and stuff like that. That sounds like he's trying to, God's telling you how to not to get STDs.
Yes.
I mean, that's wild to me. I didn't know about that.
Yep. Obviously, bodily fluids, when you're exchanging bodily fluids, there's